Good evening and welcome to Saturday's 6-1 News, coming to you live from Dublin Castle. The headlines this evening. Uachtaráin na hÉireann Katherine Connelly is set to be declared Ireland's 10th president in an overwhelming victory.
I'm absolutely delighted with the result, and I want to thank all of my supporters.
Election marked by unprecedented number of spoilt and invalid ballot papers.
The choices were there, that the suit was responsible.
News today, man threatens to hurt a baby with broken glass during carjacking in Belfast city centre. And a DAA data breach of boarding pass information at Dublin and Cork airports. Hundreds of thousands of passengers may have been affected.
Independent candidate Katherine Connelly is set to be declared Ireland's 10th president in what has been described as a landslide victory and potential seismic shift in Irish politics. Her rival, Fine Gael candidate Heather Humphreys, conceded defeat earlier this afternoon, while this evening the Taoiseach and Tánaiste congratulated Katherine Connelly on her victory. An official declaration is expected here at Dublin Castle shortly. As things stand, we have results in from 39 of 43 constituencies. And as you can see there, Katherine Connelly has 62.8% of the vote, followed by Heather Humphreys on less than half of that, 30% of the vote, and Jim Gavin, who isn't in this race anymore, on 7.2%. If you take a look at the valid poll there, it's 1,320,000, and that is because the number of invalid votes currently stands at 191,192 votes. That's out of 39 of the 43 constituencies. Taking a look at turnout, it's at 45.9%. It's lower than last year's general election, but despite predictions of a record low turnout, you can see it has already surpassed the last presidential election in 2018. Now, for the first of our reports this evening, here's our political correspondent, Micheál Lahan, on how events have been unfolding today.
It did not take long at all after the boxes opened to reveal who will become the country's new first citizen. As Katherine Connelly pored over the early data and clear signals, she jokingly put her worry beads away and spoke in terms befitting a president-elect.
I'm absolutely delighted with the result, and I want to thank all of my supporters. Actually, I want to thank everybody, even those that didn't vote for me. I understand their concerns in relation to who will represent them best.
By early afternoon, Heather Humphreys graciously conceded on home soil.
I want to congratulate Katherine on becoming the next President of Ireland, and can I just say that Katherine will be a President for all of us, and she will be my President.
A life beyond politics is to the forefront of her mind now.
I have a 7-week-old grandson that I really haven't seen much of, and I'm very fond of my garden, and I can assure you I have a lot of work to do because I haven't been there for well over 2 months.
For those remaining in the political field, particularly the parties who fused together to back Katherine Connelly, there is a belief that today will alter the recent political trajectory.
Part of this result, at least, is a very definitive judgment on the part of the Irish public on the Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael government.
This was a movement. It was a movement behind Katherine, but for Katherine's values on housing justice, in defence of neutrality.
As the counting draws to a close, it is strikingly clear that an unprecedented number of people spoiled their vote. But it was future votes that Katherine Connelly's supporters were focusing on.
Today can mark the beginning of a new momentum towards that centre-left-led government after the next election.
Katherine's campaign has done something really special in that it gives people hope that that change is possible.
Others too were assessing the impact of this vote with a measured but concerned gaze.
we have to accept that there's a demographic tide underneath us and it's going in the wrong direction. And if we don't address that quickly, well then the next couple of elections will be very challenging for us.
Those political calculations are for another day. The next few hours are about the election of the country's 10th president. Micheál Lahan, RTE News.
Well, a record number of spoiled or invalid votes have been recorded during today's count, an indication of dissatisfaction among the electorate with the presidential candidates and the campaign. So far, more than 190,000 spoiled votes have been counted, with the highest level recorded in Dublin Midwest. On Commission, Tánaiste has said there will be a need for deeper and further reflection on why so many people deliberately chose this route.
A protest vote on a historic scale. The 2025 presidential election has seen tens of thousands registering their distrust of the political system, with voters citing a motley of reasons for this deliberate choice.
The choice was there, didn't suit us, we spoiled the vote.
I just voted for Maria Steen, put her number one. It's a protest to tell the government that they shouldn't be selecting who we choose. We should choose them.
I gave Gavin to upset the Dukes.
So you gave Jim Gavin your number one? Why?
Just upset the whole system for him.
Many ballot papers cited immigration or crime. Some even offered alternative candidates, including Maria Steen, who fell just short of the threshold for nomination.
It seems like towards the end of the campaign, there was a bit of a late surge towards the spoiled vote option as a lightning rod for people who are opposed to what had been happening during the campaign. And in fact, to the extent to which lots of candidates had obviously pulled out, and it just meant that it became this very strong option.
Businessman Declan Ganley, who was part of the Spoil the Vote campaign, said today that people chose this action because they were not motivated by the debate or the competition. Others said the choice was too limited.
It is a political earthquake. It is a two fingers to the political establishment by a chunk of people who feel that they're excluded from the political system in this country. And we in A2 have said loud and clear over the last number of weeks that the election was far too narrow.
It's clear that there is a wide spectrum of reasons why people chose to spoil their vote, but there is already discussion on whether the nomination criteria should be relaxed. And the Electoral Commission has said there must be reflection on the scale of those who chose to reject the choice, with the political system left to digest this new level of disconnection in the electorate. Sandra Hurley, RTE News.
Well, our political correspondent Paul Cunning is standing here with me at Dublin Castle. Paul, there's obviously the main story that will come out of this election, who will become president, but then there's that whole invalid vote, the number of people who decided to use their vote to protest.
Yeah, I suppose some things can get lost. We always have to come back to the point. This is Katherine Connelly's day, a stunning victory for her. It was absolutely clear what the people's verdict was. In the RDS in Dublin, when all of those ballot papers tumbled out onto the tables, she has won. Political leaders of the left who supported her being very clear to say that this is Catherine's day. But there's also a dynamic there. They're talking about what it might mean. Sinn Féin Mary Lou McDonald talking about how they cooperated so well together, the parties of the left. Ivana Bacik talking about this being a movement. Holly Kern saying change doesn't end here. So can they turn it into something? We don't know. For Fine Gael, Simon Harris being defensive, saying that he backed Heather Humphreys to the hilt. He said, no, this wasn't a negative campaign. They were just asking questions and suggesting that the real problem wasn't Fine Gael, it was when Jim Gavin pulled out. Maybe a few eyebrows would be raised there. But as you say, that ballot, so many spoiled votes. You know, if you look back to 2018, there was only 18,000. With 33 constituencies counted, it had already gone beyond 155,000. Will we ever work out just what that meant? Certainly politicians won't be able to ignore it. But that's all for maybe tomorrow. Today is about Katherine Connelly. She's going to walk into this room in the next hour. She'll walk in as a TD and a presidential candidate. She'll walk out president-elect. Earlier on, she said she wanted to thank everyone, not just those who voted for her, those who didn't. Maybe a sign that this is the person who's about to become first citizen and represent us all very soon.
And a really big moment for that campaign as well. Paul Cunningham, thank you so much for joining me. Well, Katherine Connelly's supporters and friends gathered from early in Galway as the count got underway. It was clear from early that it was going to be her day.
This is a history day for me, and I never thought the day would come that Katherine would be President of Ireland, and her grandfather came from Inishbarchan off Lettermore there. I never thought we would see the day we would have a president from roots from Connemara, and it's a proud day for Connemara today that Katherine Connelly will be the next president.
You're heading to Dublin Castle, I hear.
I'll be going up now, and it's something that something maybe you dream of, but I never dreamed of this, that I never thought the day would be there, that we would have our own president.
Well, look, I think we saw two very clear messages. One was about status quo, and one was about change. And I think young people we see, if we don't get change in this country, there's going to be no country for us. And I think Katherine Connelly showed that she'll fight for a nation where we can get houses, where we won't have to emigrate, where we won't lose all our friends and family to Australia and Canada. And I think that was, she put up such an inspiring vision. And I saw, I was texting young people, the amount of people I know who were getting buses home to who knows where to vote tomorrow, I think it was instrumental.
I think Katherine is an inspiration to all women, and I'm delighted. She's only 3 months old. I'm delighted that she's going to grow up with a president being a woman, and such a sincere, genuine and strong woman. I've known Katherine for a good few years. Since I was eligible to vote, she's always had my number one vote. So I don't know who I'm going to give my number one vote to now for the next 7 years. But I'm delighted for Katherine. I think it's well deserved. I think she worked incredibly hard. I think she had a fantastic campaign team that worked very hard for her. And sure, who wouldn't? She has a proven track record. She's an incredible woman. I'm delighted for her.
Well, I'm joined now by Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou MacDonald. Sinn Féin took a while to decide what they were going to do in this presidential campaign. Are you happy this evening that you backed the right horse?
This is a tremendous and historic mandate for Katherine Connelly, and she deserves immense personal credit for that. It's also a landslide for optimism and hope over the politics of cynicism and negativity. It's a campaign that was about Irish neutrality, about Irish reunification, about citizens with disabilities, about carers, about every generation having a democratic stake, but particularly our younger people. And Sinn Féin came into this campaign exactly on cue, exactly at the right time, and our activists with so many other from the other political parties and people for whom this is their first experience of kind of political campaigning together crafted an incredible historic win and campaign.
As a win for Sinn Féin?
I think it's a win for all of us. Most importantly, it's a win for Ireland, in my view. I think in Katherine we will have a formidable, steely, but gracious and kind president. I think she will lead with distinction, so the big win is for Ireland. But of course, for all of us that have been part of this campaign, it has been interesting, collaborative, and I hope for people who maybe had despaired that maybe there wasn't politics beyond Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, we've shown them that when we work together, when we collaborate, when we show up together and for each other, we can not just perform, but we can win.
Do you think that's something that can be built on for the next general election?
Absolutely. And I think there will be an expectation, correctly, that we continue to work in common cause, on common platforms. We are distinct and different parties. We're an Irish Republican Party. I'm so happy that the issue of Irish reunification has been front and centre in this campaign. The need for preparation for referendums. That's powerful politics. And we need to work together across the combined opposition to see off Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil.
We can see that Katherine Connelly is actually just arriving here into St Patrick's Hall here in Dublin Castle. So I'm sure her supporters will be delighted to see her. There you go, you can hear people now. Delighted to see their candidate, who they've spent months since July campaigning for. And she's being hugged there by people as they greet her here in St Patrick's Hall. Mary Lou MacDonald, one other thing I wanted to ask you about is the number of invalid votes, the number of people who used their democratic right to protest. Now, they weren't doing what the government parties asked them to do in terms of a candidate, but they weren't doing what you were asking either, were they?
Well, look, I think it has to be acknowledged that there's a lot of people who felt disconnected from this election, a lot of people who felt they weren't represented, a lot of people who were angry, particularly with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, for blocking candidates that they wish to see on the ballot sheet. So I think we need to pay attention to that, and I think we now need to really listen to people, hear what they have to say. We don't all have to agree, but we have to accept that everybody has a stake in every democratic process. And certainly for my part, I want to hear from all of those people. It's not that we will agree on everything, but let's have a respectful dialogue.
Were you surprised by the number of people who chose to exercise
I mean,
their vote
it
that
was
way?
clear that it was a unique kind of election in many ways, and it was clear very early on that there was a sizable group who wished to see candidates on the ballot who didn't make it for various reasons. And there was a frustration with the party of Simon Harris and of Micheál Martin for actively blocking that prospect. So, no, I'm not surprised at that.
Right. Now, there are some Sinn Féin supporters tonight who are saying, well, that actually could be you, Mary Lou McDonald.
Well,
Sinn Féin had a fielded you to them.
I think everyone in Sinn Féin and who supports this recognises this as a massive, massive historic victory and achievement. They're delighted to have Katherine as our incoming Uachtaráin, and very, very ambitious now for the future with two objectives. I've said it all along: to keep Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael out of the Euros, to have a marvellous, independent, incredible, articulate woman in the park. We've achieved that, and the next job is to get Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael out of government as soon as we possibly can.
Mary Lou McDonald, leader of Sinn Féin, thank you for joining us from Dublin Castle. Well, as you can see, we are expecting some news here in the next short while, but for now, I will hand you back to Eileen until we get that.
Election coverage. Back to Dublin Castle now, and Sharon.
Thanks, Eileen. Well, welcome back to Dublin Castle, where things are becoming a little bit more excited and fevered here in the last little while. Earlier today, losing candidate Heather Humphreys arrived here with her team, as the declaration is expected here very soon. She spoke to reporters earlier in the day at the Cavan Monaghan Count Centre in her own former constituency, and she said she had enjoyed the campaign and she had no regrets.
Any regrets?
No, I have no regrets. I stepped up to the plate, and that's what democracy is about. It's about people putting their name on the ballot paper, about people going forward. So I have absolutely not one regret, and I'm glad I did it.
Is it a bruising campaign? Were you subjected to unfair abuse or scrutiny at any stage?
Yeah, well, I have always tried to honestly answer all the questions that were asked of me. I would say that I found the piece about sectarianism very difficult. My family and I, but especially my family, were subject to some absolutely awful sectarian abuse, and I was disappointed because as a country I thought we could have gone from that. And I do think there needs to be a greater understanding of other traditions in this country, and perhaps that's something that maybe I can contribute towards, because there's a lot of misunderstanding out there, and if we're ever to have a united Ireland, we have to respect all traditions. So that is something that I think should be looked at.
Fine Gael's Minister for Agriculture and TD for Kildare South, and also the Director of Elections for Heather Humphreys, Martin Hayden, is here with me in Dublin Castle. There's a lot of theories out there as to why Fine Gael lost this election. Why do you think it happened?
Well, first of all, can I take this opportunity to congratulate Katherine Connelly and her team on what has been a very good success for her, and wish her every success as a 10th on the Heron, because that success is so important to all of us, and she'll have that full support. And also to recognise the great role, the resilience, the huge energy and enthusiasm that Heather brought to the campaign. We're very proud of her. She's a person of great honesty and integrity. Fine Gael's candidate in this election lost because it was the only other candidate in the field, and if you didn't win, you were going to be second. We didn't envisage at the start that this would only be two candidates in the end, and a binary choice. And there's lots of very unique things happened in the lead up to this. That were not to be anticipated when the campaign started. But Fine Gael was determined from the start to contest this election, because we believe in the institutions of the state. The highest office in the land was something we wanted to try and win, and if we didn't win, we wanted to make sure the person who did was contested, and that they had a strong mandate, and that's what's transpired here today.
Heather Humphreys, as you say, she was out there, she worked hard, she said she gave it her all, and she really took one for your party, because originally she wasn't supposed to be the candidate, and she stepped in then when Mairead McGuinness said she wasn't going to run for health reasons. Was it a mistake for the party not to have an internal selection or an internal election to choose a candidate that perhaps everybody would have got behind and gone out and campaigned and canvassed for?
So Heather did step up when, unfortunately, Mairead, due to ill health, had to step back in August, and Heather gave it everything. But we did have a process at that time. It was open to the Executive Council of the party to just nominate somebody else, or to decide to step out and not replace Mairead. We were determined to have a contestant in the field to contest what is a very, very important election. And it was open for members of the party to nominate candidates. Heather was the only person to successfully come through that process, but there was a process there for her to do that. And as I say, she gave it her all. But we are the party who were determined to have people, a candidate in the field. And I think it's reflective of the disappointment there is from others that it was such a narrow field, is down to the fact that 5 other parties coalesced around one candidate. Members of the Oireachtas outside of Fine Gael, members of local authorities outside of Fine Gael had the opportunity to nominate other candidates and failed to do so. And the people have spoken today in terms of the spoiled votes in their disappointment of not having more choice as well.
One tactic that Fine Gael had was negative campaigning. It didn't work. People didn't like it.
So I disagree with that. We had one video that had very legitimate questions that we felt weren't being answered in that campaign. Nobody has pointed out to any element of that video that is factually incorrect. It was a valid, legitimate point to do. There was plenty of other videos against Heather that were much more sectarian in nature and that. But we stand over our campaign. We felt there was very legitimate questions to be answered, and that was a fair point to raise.
All right, Martin Hayden, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us here at Dublin Castle. Well, still to come on the programme, we will have more coverage of the presidential election with Katherine Connelly, set to become the 10th President of Ireland.
Welcome back to 6-1. The main news this evening. Independent candidate Katherine Connelly has arrived at Dublin Castle and is set to be declared the winner of the presidential election in what has been described as a landslide victory and potential seismic shift in Irish politics. Her rival, Fine Gael candidate Heather Humphreys, conceded defeat earlier this afternoon. An unprecedented level of spoiled votes have been registered all over the country, with thousands of people feeling disenfranchised by the election process. An Comisiún Tánaiste has said there will be a need for deeper and further reflection on why so many people deliberately chose this route. And a baby was threatened with broken glass during a carjacking in Belfast city centre. The PSNI says a delivery driver got out of his car in the Donegal Place area at around 10 to 4 this morning. His partner and her baby were in the back seat at the time.
Well, welcome back to Dublin Castle, where people are starting to gather in anticipation of a declaration. I'm joined now by Ivana Bacik, who is the leader of the Labour Party. Your party, of course, was one of those that coalesced around Katherine Connelly and backed her as a candidate. You must be feeling fairly pleased this evening, are you?
We're just delighted, Sharon. We're so happy to see this outcome. Yes, we were one of the first parties to back Katherine back in July. I could see that the potential there in the
campaign was so clear that Katherine represented the values and the vision that we in Labour hold dear, a vision of an Ireland of equals, an Ireland of solidarity, and she's encapsulated that vision and values and really built a movement since then, and we in Labour have been so proud to be part of it. I want to pay tribute to Katherine herself, to her amazing team led by Bevan O'Connor, who have just galvanised such support around what has really become a movement. And now we're seeing her about to be elected the 10th Uachtar on the Héireann. It's so exciting, it's so refreshing, and there's such energy in this campaign.
And what is it that you think is bringing that energy to this campaign? Because we've seen so many younger voters turn out. There were concerts, artists, musicians. People were getting behind Katherine Connelly. Is that all part of it?
I think it's a sense of hope. I think she's giving people a sense of hope that there is an alternative politics possible, that we can have a left-led, a centre-left-led government after the next election, that it is possible to move beyond the politics of the past of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. I think Katherine's vision, so clearly articulated, has just given people, especially younger people, a real hope for the future. And that's what's so exciting about this. That's what's so exciting about this amazing result today, is this seismic shift in Irish politics that it represents.
But also so many people disillusioned. What do you say to those people tonight?
Well, look, I think we have to address the level of spoiled votes. I think clearly people were concerned. There's a wide array of reasons why people spoil their votes, and of course people are entitled to spoil their votes. But to see a campaign being orchestrated whereby people were being asked to spoil votes, I think is really concerning. I think it's undermining of democracy. But look, leaving that aside, today is Katherine's day. Today is a great day for a united front that have come behind Katherine. It shows that we have more in common on the left than that which divides us. And I think that's what's giving people hope and a sense of excitement for the future with Katherine as our 10th president.
Right, Ivana Bacik, Labour leader, thank you for speaking to us from Dublin Castle this evening. We'll be back with more shortly, but for the moment, back to you, Eileen, in studio.
Thanks, Sharon. Well, the new president will, of course, have to deal with many challenges over her 7-year term. Conor Hunt has been looking at some of the issues that await Katherine Connelly as 10th President of Ireland.
It is the highest office in the land, and soon it will have a new occupant. Briefings aplenty and a full in-tray awaits. One of the first and immediate matters will be her appointments to the Council of State and her inauguration speech, a chance to set out the theme of her presidency.
A very important speech, sets the tone for the new president's agenda. It's an opportunity, I think, to say what the president's priorities will be, what their beliefs are, what their principles are, what they aspire Ireland to be. It's really up to them. It's a blank sheet of paper.
President Higgins showed he had few qualms about speaking up. The question, will our next president follow suit? With issues like housing and neutrality likely to remain to the fore, her relationship with the government will always be closely watched for any hints of criticisms or slights. A significant part of the job is, of course, representing Ireland abroad. So too is hosting, opening up the Áras to local visitors. And there'll be foreign dignitaries too. None come bigger than the US president. Any visit to the Áras will be a high-level affair. The question of a united Ireland looks set to grow louder over the next 7 years. What role the new president plays in that conversation will be likely scrutinised.
So the debate over the United Ireland, it's not going to go away because there are calls now north and south for it. Now, whether it is a vote that will happen over the term of the new president is slightly doubtful because it will take a bit of time to get the homework together, to get the sentiment right on both sides. But it is an issue that is going to continue.
A new president, many matters will come across her desk over the next 7 years. Conor Hunt, RTE News.
Well, welcome back to Dublin Castle, where I'm joined now by the Taoiseach, Micheál Martin. Thank you for coming to speak to us on 6-1 this evening. How are you feeling?
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate Katherine Connelly on an outstanding election victory, a very emphatic one. Ran a very good campaign that impacted very significantly on the people. Commiserations to Heather Humphreys, pay tribute to Heather and to Jim Gavin. Both put their names forward. That's difficult. It takes courage to do that. But today is Katherine Connelly's day. She will be our next president of Ireland. I wish Katherine well, has been a very capable parliamentarian, and I've no doubt she will be a very effective president for the people of this country.
What do you think it was about Katherine Connelly's campaign, a campaign backed by the parties on the left, that spoke to people?
Well, I think herself, her own personality, the manner in which she came across, ran a very effective campaign, the length and breadth of the country. Catherine's articulate and authentic in terms of her views. And I think that mattered in terms of the impression she created with people across the country.
As President, you will have to meet her, of course, as Taoiseach, I think once a month or something like that. And she has said she would like those discussions to be frank and a two-way conversation. Will you be open to that, to hearing her opinions on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I've had them with outgoing President Michael D. Higgins, who again I pay tribute to, and we thank him for his service to the country. There are Article 28 meetings, not quite every month, but they're regular, and every issue of the day is discussed, and the Taoiseach of the day outlines to the President the kind of issues the government is dealing with, the challenges and so on, and the President then gives his or her perspective, and in this case it'll be Catherine's perspective on issues, but that's laid down within the Constitution, and I find them very thought-provoking, informative and pleasant meetings.
There was a sizable number of spoilt votes, people who used their democratic right to vote to protest. What do you think that was about, or what do you think is the feeling?
After every election, I think the people are sovereign. We have to listen to the people, and I think the size of that spoiled vote number is a concern that we have to delve into a bit more and analyse a bit more. Maybe the system is too restrictive, although I think there's been criticism of the main parties, which is absolutely, I think, unwarranted, because we have a much more fragmented political system now today than we would have had, say, 30 years ago or 20 years ago. But nonetheless, the system is a bit fragmented, or is a bit restrictive in terms of how one gets nominated for the
Would you be open to that changing?
We're open to change, but we have to work it through with other parties. I mean, a lot of parties didn't nominate any candidates. I mean, Fianna Fáil did, Fine Gael did, but Sinn Féin didn't, Labour didn't, Soc Dems didn't. So they came together to nominate one. So that in itself restricted the field. And I don't think it's fair either to say that someone who has different views to another person should still nominate another person if you have different political views to them. That doesn't make sense to me. So we would be open, however, to enabling people to get nominated, perhaps in a more easier
manner. And you've 7 years to work on that for our next presidential election. Micheál Martin Taoiseach, thank you for joining us. Well, we are getting ready for a declaration here in St. Patrick's Hall in Dublin Castle. For the moment, though, I'll hand you back to Eileen, and you can come back to us when we have that.
Welcome back to 6-1, the main news again this evening. Independent candidate Katherine Connelly has arrived at Dublin Castle and is set to be declared the winner of the presidential election shortly. It's been described as a landslide victory and a potential seismic shift in Irish politics. A record number of spoiled or invalid votes have been recorded during today's count, an indication of dissatisfaction among the electorate with the presidential candidates and with the campaign. Now let's go over to Eamon. Well, we hope to be going to Dublin Castle shortly for a declaration. But in the meantime, let's go to Fran McNulty now for an update on the count centres.
Thank you, Eileen. We have 41 of 43 constituencies have been returned. As you can see, we're just waiting for Dublin North West and Waterford, and here is the state of play at the moment. Katherine Connelly on 63.1%, Heather Humphreys just shy of 30% on 29.7%, and Jim Gavin, the candidate who pulled out of the race, on 7.2%. The turnout just shy of 46%, but look at this figure here. Invalid votes, almost 204,000. That's just shy of 13% of people who turned out to vote decided to either spoil their paper or made a mistake when they were filling out that ballot paper. Combine that with the vote for Jim Gavin, that means more than 300,000 people either spoiled their vote, made a mistake or voted for a candidate who wasn't in the race. So 45.9% turnout, as we said. Let's see how that compares with the previous presidential election in 2018. It's actually 2% above the previous presidential election. There were some predictions early this morning that would be a record, an all-time low, but it is well beyond it. But as you can see, it is shy of the general election and also shy of the presidential election in 2011. So that's the state of play as things stand. Katherine Connelly set to become president, we expect, in the next few minutes. Back to you, Eileen.
Fran McNulty, thank you. Well, I'm joined in studio now by Teresa Reedy, who's Senior Lecturer in the Department of Government and Politics at UCC. Teresa, thank you for joining us here on the 6-1. We've had a lot of criticism of the way this election was run, the lack of candidates, etc. We've seen all those spoiled votes. But it's been described as a movement behind Katherine Connelly. In your assessment, could anyone have beaten her?
I mean, I think it was a very unusual election. We only had 2 candidates and the dynamic was very, very different. And I think then it's very hard to insert candidates and say X or Y might have beaten her. I think it would have been very difficult for a government candidate to have beaten her, because I think a lot of the dynamics of the campaign crystallised around government versus opposition, and maybe even broader than that, a kind of anti-establishment sentiment. And I think certainly for a government candidate it would have been very, very difficult, because there's a lot of anger out there. I think that you probably need to dig into it a little bit more. I think there is a nascent left-wing movement that is behind Katherine Connelly that has really emerged in the course of this campaign. I think there are quite a few disappointed middle-class voters, and we saw that in the voting profiles as we went around the country today. Places where traditionally Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael would usually be quite strong, where a majority of voters were voting for Katherine Connelly. That's a warning shot for the government parties. And then there is this group of really angry voters, and I think that group is bigger than what we had previously understood, and perhaps more motivated. It is quite something to go out to vote in those numbers and to spoil your vote. And I think that's also a concern potentially both for the left-wing coalition that's starting to take shape, but also for the government. Some of these voters are really very angry indeed. They're not homogenous either. You seem to have a group in there, perhaps you might call them the Catholic right, who were disappointed and who kind of really rooted around the kind of Maria Steen non-candidacy in the end. But there's also a much, it would seem, bigger group of spoiled votes that we saw today that had very strong anti-immigrant sentiment and that are really, really angry with the government. And I think that's a particularly vexing challenge that's facing the entire political system.
Now, we're hoping for a declaration shortly. We had a report earlier about the challenges facing the 10th president, and neutrality, the prospect of a united Ireland, not least among them. What do you think will be the main challenges?
I think the first thing to say is, Katherine Connelly she has a stunning victory today, so she has a huge electoral mandate, and that matters a great deal when you're president. You have a lot of support behind you, and you can speak with authority on behalf of the nation, and that's her role. But at the same time, you are in a very constrained position. And I think that's going to be the difficult path that Katherine Connelly now has to navigate, especially because she has been a particularly vocal and articulate advocate on certain causes. And it will be much more difficult to continue with some of those causes into her role in Áras an Uachtaráin. And I think she was already starting to temper some of the expectations about her support group earlier in the week, talking about her role as Las Ceann Comhairle and the distinction between how you are an opposition TD versus what it's like to be in an official position. And I think that's where the tension will come in, navigating that pathway and not being too disappointed for her supporters, not in terms of where she goes.
Teresa Reedy, Professor of Government at UCC, thank you for joining us on 6-1. Now, as we wait for that official declaration from Dublin Castle, let's hear the reaction of some people in Galway to the election result and Katherine Connelly's sweeping victory.
I think it's great for Galway, it's great for Connacht, and it's great for Ireland.
Yeah.
We're home on holidays from Germany, and it's my wife Katherine.
We are very proud.
Yeah.
We're just heading down now to Salt Hill Hotel to celebrate with some of our more ardent supporters, and we brought a rainbow with us, which is kind of a special tribute to her success.
And Catherine's so wonderful. She's done so much for the whole country, not just Galway.
So delighted with the news that she's gotten the presidency, and we both voted for her, so...
And you've both just been swimming in the sea.
Yeah.
She loves to swim herself.
She does, yeah.
Not too much more in the Atlantic Ocean for her.
Yeah. I don't think so, no. Maybe Dublin Sea.
Did the young vote help?
I would say we did, yeah, definitely. I'd say so. But also in Galway, I think she's well liked. People do know her personally a lot, and people have seen her around, and people know she's a good person. Yeah, and we're both native Irish speakers as well, so I think the Irish language. I think in Connemara she's very well liked as well. I think the Irish language really got her over the edge, gave her an edge as well, I think.
And Teresa Mannion is standing by for us now in Galway. We heard from young and old there, Teresa. It's safe to say the mood there is one of pride in Katherine Connelly.
Absolutely, Eileen. I think that snapshot poll on the Galway prom gives you a sort of an indication of the cross mix of people that Katherine Connelly appeals to. I mean, we have seen all sorts of people speaking there, and although there was a significant cohort of people who spoiled their votes and people who didn't feel represented. Those who did come out to vote did give Katherine Connelly a resounding victory. And I think people are of all ages have come out and voted. She has transcended age and gender and geography. She has politically engaged young voters who did come out to vote. And then there was the elderly Galwegian, the older neighbours in place in Chantlow who grew up with her on the street and probably did keepy uppies with her. And you saw that couple on the prom who claimed responsibility for the rainbow. They're all partying this evening in Salt Hill with supporters and family members who are no doubt watching the momentous occasion unfolding in Dublin Castle at the moment.
Teresa Mannion in Galway, thank you. Now let's go back to Sharon Tobin at Dublin Castle.
Thanks, Eileen. Well, Katherine Connelly has been an independent TD for Galway West for 11 years and has been in public life since 1999. After today's resounding result, she is now set to be inaugurated as the 10th President of Ireland.
Katherine Connelly grew up in the Shantala area of Galway City as one of 14 children, 7 brothers and 7 sisters. She got a master's degree in clinical psychology from the University of Leeds in 1981 and in 1989 earned a law degree from the University of Galway and later became a barrister. The 68-year-old is married to Brian McHenry and they have 2 adult sons. Miss Connelly first entered local politics in 1999 as a Labour councillor, becoming Mayor of Galway 5 years later. However, she left the Labour Party in 2006 after it decided not to run a second candidate alongside Michael D. Higgins for the Dáil elections the following year. She ran unsuccessfully in that election in 2007 and was also unsuccessful in 2011. But in 2016, on her third attempt, she was elected as an independent TD for Galway West. In 2020, she was elected Last Ceann Comhairle of the Dáil, the first woman to hold that position. She was re-elected TD for the 3rd time last year, but announced in July she was running for president with the backing of left-leaning parties and independents. Sinn Féin also gave her their backing. Now she has won the presidential race, she will be inaugurated on November the 11th, ending her time as a member of Dáil Éireann and beginning her 7-year tenure as Uachtaráin na hÉireann. Joe McGrady, RTE News.
Well, back at Dublin Castle, people have gathered, supporters, political parties, Katherine Connelly, and everybody is awaiting that declaration that Katherine Connelly will be the 10th President of Ireland. Well, for some more analysis of what's been happening today and what we can expect in the coming hours is our political correspondent, Paul Cunningham. Paul, we've been speaking to various different leaders here, Mary Lou MacDonald of Sinn Féin, Ivana Bacik. They're thrilled.
Absolutely. Some of the opposition politicians, while waiting for the declaration, have just made an arc there, all of them standing together, and what they want to do is to get a picture which projects we have done it and we can do it again. We've done it in the presidential election by helping Katherine Connelly get over the line, and when it comes to the general election, we're going to try and act in a cohesive fashion and for the first time get Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael out of government, have left-wing parties in instead. That's what they're trying to do. The question is, can they do it? Because the presidential election is one thing, a general election is another. The first test of this, as we've been hearing, is going to be in that Galway West constituency. There will be a by-election probably in May of next year. Are they able to agree on a candidate? Can they work together, or will they have to assert their own identities for their own members? who want to vote for their party, not someone else. So there will be a test of that in the very short term. The other thing to note is that for Katherine Connelly herself, after being elected by herself and her campaign, but with the support of those left-wing parties, she too has to do something of a pivot and become that president who represents all of us. And if you look at the stats, in 2018, when Michael D. Higgins won his second term, he was, around someone who was seen to be extremely popular, had done an awful lot, but was representing everyone. Katherine Connelly just looks, even though there's two constituencies still to declare, she's already got 50,000 more votes than Michael D. Higgins, but she too has to be like him and be that president for everyone. So that will be something to watch. She has to effectively just walk away a little bit from those political supporters.
Do you think she's going to find that difficult? Because throughout this campaign she was asked about her beliefs in everything, but some of those will have to be parked now because she's not really entitled as president to speak out on those matters, is she?
I think she'll have no problem doing that whatsoever. Clearly very smart, and in recent days had been alluding to the fact that there were limits on her power due to the Constitution. I heard you interviewing Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach. Was he concerned that he'd be sitting down with Katherine Connelly, that they would have a two-way conversation? And he didn't seem to think that it would be a problem. It'll be different. But he's had to have dinner with Michael D. Higgins, someone who does have very strong opinions, comes from a different political standpoint, and he didn't have an issue there. So there'll be a feeling each other out period. But with regard to will she be able to do it, I think she'll do it convincingly. There won't be any problem at all.
There are also political party members here from Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. It's been a bruising presidential election for both of those parties. Have you been speaking to them? How are they feeling?
Yeah, there's very few members of Fianna Fáil here. And to a certain extent, that's explained by Jim Gavin being out of the contest for 2 weeks. They are sore. This has been an awful campaign. The one thing they'll be able to say is we had a parliamentary party meeting. We did let off an awful lot of steam, and we've got a process in place now, and we expect that to be published in November, both about the campaign and how they might change. For Fine Gael, they're still sore. I mean, Heather Humphreys is on around 29%. The Tánaiste, Simon Harris, was valiantly trying to say that was above and beyond Fine Gael's reach, that they had performed nearly 30%. That was a good, strong showing. In truth, it's been a really, really bad campaign for Fine Gael, and we still haven't seen what outflow is going to come from that. There's lots of politicians there, but not saying too much just about what might happen next. They're saying today is Catherine's Day, and they just want to leave it at that.
And Heather Humphreys was here in the hall up to a few minutes ago. I'm not sure if she's left or whether she's still around, but that must have been very difficult for her because she went out there, she came out of retirement essentially to go out and fight this election for her party.
She's a consummate politician. She came in here with a smile on her face. She's been shaking hands not just with the Fine Gael members but others as well, and to a certain extent it was more like the Heather Humphreys I knew, the person who was always had a word for someone, who was warm, inviting, would give you a hug if she got half a chance. During the campaign she did become quite sort of tough talking, questioning, as she would put it, negative how the opposition branded it. So it was interesting to see the person who maybe we were more familiar with back here on the floor. But yeah, a hard day. She's here, she's going to take us, she knows what this is about, and then she's going to go back and have the next day to her.
We're still waiting for a few of the constituencies to return the results. At the moment we're at 40 out of 43. Have there been any big surprises here today, aside from the number of people who decided to spoil their votes?
One thing is no surprise is we sometimes around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon see lots of constituencies declaring, and this sense builds up that the result is just around the corner. There's always a problem with 1 or 2, and they're going to hold things up, but they'll get through it very quickly, and they've done a very good job. I mean, I think for Heather Humphreys, she was able to hold on to Cavan Monaghan. That was a huge thing for her at a personal level, but the truth is 42 of the 43 have broken for Katherine Connelly. It is a stunning result, and that has happened in places where Fine Gael has got an awful lot of strength, places like Dudleary, where they often had sort of 2 TDs in the constituency and were able to power through. So yeah, lots of surprises, but the result clear as a bell when they opened up those boxes at 9 o'clock.
All right, stay with us, Paul, but for the moment we're going to stay here for the moment. Sorry, Paul, I thought I was going to give you a breather there for a minute. One of the issues that everybody is talking about is the number of people who didn't feel represented in this election by the parties of the left or by, as they saw, the establishment parties. And people talking about this having to change in future presidential elections, that perhaps the process to get on the ballot paper in the first place isn't the right one. Micheál Martin said here today it perhaps will have to be looked at.
I think given the scale of the votes that were spoiled, some reflection has to take place. I mean, I think it was 18,000 spoiled votes in 2018. By the time 33 constituencies are declared, there was 155,000 spoiled votes. We'll find out the final figure. I think that is going to precipitate at least a reflection, if not a change, because I was down there looking at those ballots for several hours in the RDS, and people were putting out various different reasons, different candidates, different reasons as to why they felt they were locked out.
And all of that will be assessed, I'm sure, in the coming days, weeks and months. For the moment, back to you, Eileen, in studio.
Thanks very much, Sharon. Well, let's stay with our main story today. I'm joined by our political correspondent, Micheál Hahn. Micheál, we've heard it being described as a seismic victory for Katherine Connelly. What are your takeaways from today?
Well, I think it was a unique campaign. I mean, Katherine Connelly is someone who perfected what the poet Patrick Kavanagh talks about, the art of not caring and having the courage of your beliefs, that she was able to go forward in a campaign in a way that other politicians wouldn't, sticking to positions that were often really difficult during certain days of the campaign and not resiling from things that were controversial. That's the way she approached it. She also had a fairly unusual type of social media presence that really went viral. Again, there was an authenticity to that. Others, I think, again, will try and replicate that, and that will prove to be, I think, quite difficult, because there was something different about the Katherine Connelly campaign, as witnessed by the fact that it did attract thousands of volunteers, and of course it did have, for the first time, that degree of unity across the left when it came to a presidential candidate. So there was lots of different parts to it that created something that has led to a landslide victory, a resounding victory by any standards, tempered, I suppose, somewhat by that large section of the electorate who felt, though, that they weren't represented adequately or properly. And you can hear from Micheál Martin earlier on there a sense of humility about this and an openness to look at that. Could ways be changed to allow more people get on the ballot paper? I think when the dust settles, there'll probably be a slowness about that political commitment, though, inevitably.
And Micheál Martin did seem to be open to looking at the whole process of how we pick presidential candidates.
Yes, but I suppose there is also the fact that since 1997 there were ways onto the ticket for other candidates, and that's when that change really took effect. So it mightn't take very much at all for the medium and bigger size parties to let those on if they let their councillors give them a degree of freedom next time. I don't think you're going to see a repeat of what was evident and what was witnessed in this campaign, because it didn't seem to be beneficial to those medium-sized parties at all in the end. It's just how quickly do government move on it. There is an aim-to proposal there already, which was debated in the Dáil just on Wednesday, where it could be just 110 councillors could pave the way for someone to get on the ballot paper. Could it move quickly like that, or will there be much debating, soul-searching, and ultimately perhaps no change? What I think you'll see reflected, though, in government policy and government talk in the days ahead is a commitment to look at the issues that drove so many people to make their way to polling stations and to ultimately spoil their votes. And of course, that will come back to things like delivering on health and housing primarily.
All right, Micheál Hahn, thank you for your analysis. Let's go back to Dublin Castle now, and Sharon, and hopefully a declaration.
Not quite yet, Eileen, but I am joined by the Minister for Education, Helen McEntee, who's also TD for Meath East. Heather Humphreys has been here in the hall. She has a smile on her face, but she must be pretty upset today, is she?
Well, look, Heather is Heather, to be honest, and she's a smile on her face because she's been in politics a long time, and she knows that some days are better than others. But, you know, look, it's been a long and gruelling campaign, I think, for both candidates. So just I really want to congratulate Katherine Connelly. She's going to be our next president, and we look forward to working with her. And to say to Heather, well done as well. She's someone I've worked with a long time and someone I've been proud to support in this campaign. And I think she's really put her best foot forward, and that's exactly what you're seeing here today with Heather. So
there was a huge energy, a huge momentum behind Katherine Connelly's campaign. It was almost a grassroots movement, wasn't it? People referenced repeal, and they said there was a similar feel to it. Fine Gael just didn't have that.
Well, look, I mean, if you look at the overall vote and the percentage, it's touching 30% now. Obviously, Fine Gael would be lower than that in the polls at the moment. So what you're seeing is not just our own party supporters getting out behind Heather, together, but others as well. But there was a very clear coming together of, you could say, the opposition parties in government at the moment who got behind Katherine Connelly, and certainly from, I would say, probably early on in the campaign, there was a momentum there behind her. But, you know, Heather's campaign has been very much focused on her work in the community, whether it was in her previous ministerial roles, her work well before politics as well. She focused on what opportunities she could bring for the country, and that's really what she tried to get across over the last couple of weeks. But, you know, today's a decisive victory. People have spoken, and this is the country we live in, and it's a wonderful country. We have a great democracy, and we have a new president. It's not the campaign I think people maybe had expected. I don't think anybody expected that there would be just two candidates, and I think that completely changed the dynamic and the tone of the campaign. Normally we've had 5, 6 or 7 people. The debates are different, the focus is different, the questions are different, and that really did add to the election itself and the type of campaign that we've had.
And I think there was a lot of frustration with, as you say, two candidates, people being asked the same questions all the time. It became a little bit repetitive. People didn't feel they were getting to know the candidates as much because they kept being asked the same questions. But there was, as I say, there was that movement. I think it's getting a little bit quiet here, so if we do have a declaration, we might interrupt. But for the moment, we'll keep on talking. Katherine Connelly had the parties of the left behind her, and we've heard again and again the different party leaders here this evening say they now feel that they have a group of people who can go ahead and offer something different to the electorate. Is that worrying for government parties?
Well, on the first point, I mean, what I heard very clearly is that a lot of people actually didn't tune into maybe some of the debates, and you see that in elections people are listening to certain bits. So while it might have seemed that the questions were repetitive and the same things over and over, not everybody listened to every single debate going. So it was in the last couple of weeks that people really start to hone in on. So you're going to have a lot of the same questions, and I think that's natural. I mean, look, I think today obviously was a resounding victory for the parties that we're seeing here today, but in particular I think the candidate herself, Katherine Connelly, and people came out, if you look at the analysis, to support Katherine, and that's something that she should be very proud of. We don't always see whether it's somebody in the presidential role that then reflected in government politics. We've had Michael D. Higgins, obviously, who was a very strong Labour representative himself, who was a minister, and obviously that's not necessarily reflected in how Labour are doing at the moment on the ground, and he's been in the office for 14 years. So I think, look, we'll as a party, we'll of course analyse the election itself, as you do with any election, and I think we have to look and reflect and see what kind of answers that people gave. There's a lot of spoiled votes, obviously something maybe we haven't seen before, up on 10 or 12%, so that's something we do have to take into consideration, and something certainly we will.
Yeah, there was also negative campaigning, which is not something we often see in Irish elections. Is that going to become more frequent, do you think, in the future?
Look, I think there's always an element of it when it comes to a campaign. For my part, and I really do say this, I mean, our party have always asked questions. We'll ask tough questions, whether people see that as being negative or otherwise. There's been that accusation here, but I think it's important that you ask the tough questions, particularly on issues that you know are important to people, and that's something we've always done. I would say certainly politics in general has probably become tougher in that regard. If you look online, social media, there isn't anybody who hasn't been impacted in this campaign by the negative elements that we see online, and it's unfortunately part of political discourse now, not just in Ireland but right across the globe, and it makes it tougher, and sometimes I think puts people off getting into politics. But it's really important that we focus on the really strong democracy that we have good people putting themselves forward, and I think we have 2 really good candidates here, and obviously, as I said, you know, we move on. Tomorrow we wake up, and I will continue my work, and the government will continue its work and keep focused on what we're doing.
What do you, we understand that the returning officer is expected to come out to us in a few minutes' time. What do you think now, bearing in mind it wasn't your candidate, but what do you think the electorate, what do you think people want to see from Katherine Connelly as a president? Like, it's 60% of the vote. It's a landslide, but what do people want from her? Because clearly there was something she was offering that people were buying.
Well, look, I mean, I can't speak on behalf of anybody else and those who voted for her. I mean, Katherine has said that she will be someone to speak up and speak out, while at the same time respecting the office. And obviously there's a very clear line between government and parliament and the role of the president. It's an important role, not just at home and reflecting people's views, but a really important office for representing this whole country abroad at a European level, at an international level. So I think it's really important that our president, that Katherine, represents us, as I said, at that European and that international level as well, and she said that she will. So we will work with her, and that's our job and that's our role, and we'll work with her in the years ahead.
How important do you think it's going to be for Fine Gael and indeed the other political parties, particularly the parties in government, to sit down and look at the number of people who were angry, who were writing on their votes, all sorts of things? It wasn't one particular group, it was a disparate. There were lots of people with different... we can see Katherine Connelly actually just coming in to the room now. That's her son there walking behind her. She's walking up towards the podium, so I expect that something is likely to happen very shortly. She has a big smile on her face, and why wouldn't she, with over 60% of the vote? Lots of hugs there for Katherine Connelly from her supporters here in the room. People starting to file back into the room now. Hugs, photographs, all the important moments from a presidential election campaign as we await an announcement here from St. Patrick's Hall in Dublin Castle. It has been a fairly long campaign, it must be said, for Katherine Connelly. She has been out canvassing and campaigning since July, so I'm sure, as well as being absolutely elated tonight, she is looking forward to a rest. Helen McIntyre is still with me here. It is gruelling, isn't it, a presidential campaign? You need to get to every single corner of the country.
It is, and look, that's not possible. I mean, for both candidates, it's been a long campaign, and the fact that there's only been two of them, I know obviously started with three, but only two of them, it means there's so much more focus. It feels like we had a debate or an interview nearly every day or twice a day, and that mentally, it takes its toll for the candidates, but also trying to get round to everybody, trying to meet as many people as possible. It's a tough slog. It's a hard election, so I'm sure both of the candidates are exhausted. I'm sure their families are exhausted. I'm sure they'll be looking forward to, Katherine celebrating, Heather working with her team.
Absolutely, and we can see her celebrating there with Holly Kearns, leader of the Social Democrats, Independents there behind her as well, Sinn Féin leader Mary Lou MacDonald, Ivana Bacik too, all of the various different parties and independents of the left who have supported Katherine Connelly in her run for the presidency. Posing for some more pictures there with her family. Big moment in Katherine Connelly's career. She is shortly to be announced as the first citizen of Ireland, the 10th Uachtaráin na hÉireann. And we are just awaiting now what will happen next. We are expecting Katherine Connelly shortly to, once she has received those congratulations from well-wishers and supporters, of which there are many here in this room this evening, the returning officer, Barry Ryan, will announce the result of the first count, and shortly thereafter we expect Katherine Martina Ann Connelly to be declared elected president. Okay. The inauguration we expect to take place on November 11th. For the moment, of course, Michael D. Higgins is still the President of Ireland. Everybody wants to speak to Katherine here this evening, so bear with us. We will get there. You can see the sheer happiness in people's faces, people who've been out there canvassing with her at a grassroots level, attending all those events. She's now making her way to the podium. course, more pictures on the way. And Brian Stanley there giving his congratulations, I assume, to Katherine Connelly. The phones are up, everybody making sure they can get photographs of this special moment for Katherine Connelly and for all of her team. Heather Humphreys, the Fine Gael candidate, now taking the stage, shaking Katherine Connelly's hand, offering her congratulations. She, of course, conceded defeat in this election earlier this afternoon. And they're joined by Taoiseach Micheál Martin, Tánaiste Simon Harris, and, of course, Katherine Connelly's family on stage too. Returning officer has taken to the microphone, so we are expecting to hear from the presidential returning officer, Barry Ryan, very shortly.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. And thank you for your patience. It's been a long day. Ballot boxes opened at 9 a.m. this morning. So, first of all, just a word of thanks to all the local returning officers and their teams right across the country for the counting of votes during the long day and for getting them to us here in Dublin Castle this evening. So now I'll make the announcement, and I'll do so in Irish and in English. Tána hifigi correv áitiúla taréis na torthaí in Neachtáil Ceantar a chur in Uildum. Agus tá mé inis chun torthaí Toghcháin an Uachtarán fiche cúig ógart. I've been notified by the local returning officers of the results in each constituency, and I will now announce the results of the presidential election 2025. Lí Numlán na vótaí a carthú, milliún, Sheikhead is a quaig a sé vile, Carrickhead is a truck a sé. Total poll, 1,656,436. Lí na vótaí Neamh-Valley, Gawcade is a 30 vile, Shockgate is a truck a hucht. Invalid votes, 213,738. Lí na vótaí Bali, milliún, Carrickhead is a dahad dó vile, Sheikhead is a nóga hucht. Valid poll, 1,442,698. On quota, Shockgate is a fair hain vile, 3Cade is a quaga. Quota, 721,350. Is Shohalanas Lina Voti for Gokir or in Ordinamnica on Borper Ballod? The votes obtained by each candidate are as follows, in the order of their names on the ballot paper. Katherine Connelly, Nígade is a Cardeg Vile, Cade is a Dahada 3. Katherine Connelly, 914,143. Jim Gavin, Cade is a 3 vile, Cúig Cade is a Shaska Hucht. Jim Gavin, 103,568. Heather Humphreys. Heather Humphreys, Carrickade is a Fiche Car vile, Nígade is a Hucht Shocked. Heather Humphreys, 424,987. Tush Gwyl and quota Brincha and Makake, Dervy Manish, Gwyl, Katherine Connelly, Tuffa in a Uachtarán Éireann. second. Thank you, folks. If we just agus asperla. As she has reached a quota, I hereby declare Katherine Connelly elected to the office of President of Ireland. Good Margaret, thank you very much. That concludes the formal declaration, and now we'll just proceed to have a few words from the candidates and the Tánaiste and the Taoiseach, and we will begin with a few words from our President-elect, Katherine Connelly.
A híisi, Tánaiste, Heather, Machlan Hain, agus Barry, agus Sibse, a Charge, a Gwini Uisle, gur a míle magah, a sa bhechan seo. Agus is dótha bhhatla mo bhuiachas a choranúil do ceannarí na pártaí a thug takeíocht umlándom, agus do daoine nach bhfuil ina ball de éon pártaí, na seanadóirí neamhsplacha, agus na teachtadála neamhsplacha, agus na daoine a cha bhóta mar son machán, agus na daoine nar cha bhóta machán, baim mé i ma uachtarán do gach duine sa tír. Gach duine. Do Heather bhhatla marrá ní rá sé éasca do Heather nó dom héin, agus tógann sé muinín agus crógacht tú héin a chur os cór muintir na tíre, agus rinne Heather é sin agus cógáirdeachas. Agus tá mbeidh tnú le gin agus elderflower leat go lua. Déantí muid nuair a bhíomar i mbun díospóireachta ar RTE go mbeidh gin agus elderflower agan le chéile, go scioppa agus is féidir. Tá éag déanta agan le chéile. Am na canúna i náiríre an lá seo. Tá sé choranúil ag cosmuintir na tíre nach bhfuil siad sásta. Go bhfuil uachtarán ag tastal weithú, uachtarán a bhfuil an an éisteacht, uachtarán a chuirn béim ar na luachanna atá ag cosmuintir na tíre. Goch ar son na síochána, goch ar son aitheantas ó thabhairt don géarcéim athrú éráide, agus goch ar son cosmuintir na tíre na pobl ó chean na tíre atá obair na gapal á dhéanamh acu ar son, ba cóir aitheantas ó thabhairt agus acmhainní ó thabhairt agus thug mé gealúns le linn an achtas go raithí mé areis go ga ionad agus ba an gealúin sin á cholíne agam. Tá pobl seo glúiseacht, níl mise ach mar himbal den glúiseacht seo, agus leanaí sibse a rá leis an glúiseacht sin, le fís nua don tír agus poblacht nua a bhúnlú ar son gná winsear na tíre, agus tá an dúsán aga bhaníis na páirtílóg agus daoine nach bhfuil páirteach in éon páirteach in éon fáirtí. An dúsláán sin don inglet leis an dúsláán agus poblacht nua a bhúnlú. Gar míle. I think they like to test me to the end of my tether because there's no water available. There's nothing here. I said, water. I'm not sure I can drink out of a bottle, but we'll try. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. Taoiseach, Tánaiste, Heather, and my family. It's not easy for them to stand here. My family in particular, who are very private. And I want to thank all of you for being here, and all the leaders of the parties that came in behind me, and the TDs and senators, the independent TDs and senators who stood behind me. From day one, I emphasised that I was an independent candidate with an independent mind. And for all who voted for me, thank you very much. It will be an absolute privilege to serve you. For those who didn't vote for me and those who spoiled their votes, let me tell you, I will be an inclusive president to listen to all of you. I will be making no distinction on the basis of votes. I will be a president who listens and who reflects and who speaks when it's necessary, and a voice for peace, a voice that builds on our policy of neutrality, a voice that articulates the existential threat posed by climate change, and a voice that recognises the tremendous work being done, the length and breadth of the country, and we need to recognise that and ensure it is properly resourced. But that's your job. That's a political job on the ground. I will raise my voice, and our whole mantra during this campaign was, we can shape a new republic together, and we can use our voices for those who have or haven't the ability nor the circumstances don't allow. But my message is, use your voice in every way you can, because a republic and a democracy needs constructive questioning. And together we can shape a new republic that values everybody, that values and champions diversity, and that takes confidence in our own identity, our Irish language, our English language, and the new people who have come to our country. I will be an inclusive president for all of you, and I regard it as an absolute honour, the vote I have been given, and I will represent you nationally and internationally to the best of my ability and as professionally and as humanely as possible. Garamina Mar.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. And now can I have your attention for a few words from Heather Humphreys.
Taoiseach, Tánaiste, President-elect Katherine, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of the people who came out to vote for me. I want to say thank you to Fine Gael for nominating me to contest this election, and I want to say a huge thank you to all of my team who worked extremely hard over the last number of weeks. I know that Katherine will be a president for all of us. Uachtarán do gach duine. I also... And can I say, Katherine will be my president, and I really want to wish her well. This is her evening. So, Caharja, Katherine, agus Guramila Mahagu.
Thank you, folks. And now your attention, please, for Tánaiste Simon Harris.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to very briefly be here to sincerely congratulate the President-elect, Katherine Connelly. I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate your family, Brian, Stephen, James, all your many friends and supporters, all of the political leaders and your colleagues who supported your campaign, and the army of volunteers you had across the country. The great thing, yes, congratulations. The great thing about this country is we live in an enduring democracy. We have elections. We go at it hammer and tongs, and then we come together as a country proudly behind the winner of the election. And Katherine, you will be a president for everybody in this country, for people right up and down the length and breadth of this island. I know you will serve us with determination and distinction. And from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of everybody in the Fine Gael party and its Tánaiste, I want to wish you every success, every strength, every health and every happiness. Thank you. And to have elections, you require candidates. And I really want to thank my good friend, Heather Humphreys, for contesting the election, for her grit, her determination, her decency and her warmth. I want to thank you, your family, your supporters and everybody who worked so hard for you, and wish you every success in the next chapter. And thank you so much for your service. But today is your day. Today is your day, President-elect. And we look forward to working with you constructively, and I wish you every happiness. Gurmina Magav.
Thank you. And now your attention, please, for an Taoiseach, Micheál Martin.
Ar dúspáirte bhánam cógáidegus a dhéanamh leis an uachtarán le tufa Katherine as ochtan an óir den sco atá bhronta ort ag muintir na hÉirden. Agus bhí factas fí lethe agat, agus díobh go léir a bhí ag tuairt tacaíocht de Katherine. Factas fí le a chuir a bhaim go mór le bobal na tíre, agus sé sin le feiscint son bhór anard agus son tromlach ól bhór a bhí agat son amíocht seo. Mar aon lei sin, bhálam brónaíanamh le Heather, agus ar muochas a gháilad a socht an páirt a ghlacad tú son amíocht seo. Níl sé éasca, agus Jim Gavin mar aon lei sin. Níl sé éasca dul os cór muinte na tíre don ifigus áde sa tír. Ach déon tú é sin le dignas agus táid buíochtas agus ar ag leat. Could I say in the outset, congratulations to President-elect Katherine on an outstanding honour that has been bestowed upon her by the people of Ireland. The people are sovereign in our democracy. We've one of the longest democracies in the world, and it's one that we cherish very much indeed. And the people have spoken resoundingly today, and they've given Katherine a tremendous majority and a very clear mandate in terms of her role as the next President of Ireland. And I look forward to working with the President-elect in the years ahead in terms of the challenges we all collectively face as a nation and as a country, both domestically and internationally, and there are grave and serious challenges facing us. But I know from our experiences in Leinster House and in the Dáil that we're well capable of doing that. I want to thank Heather Humphreys, Jim Gavin for putting their names forward. It's not easy. It takes courage to go forward in an election for the President of Ireland. I think we know that at this stage, and I just really want to thank them for doing that. And Heather, you put in a great campaign, which is appreciated by people also. And to your family, in particular, to Brian and Stefan, it's a very special moment for you. This is a wonderful honour for the family, and enjoy the moment and enjoy the years to come. It's a tremendous opportunity, and it's also to serve the Irish people as first citizen. I want to thank on all our behalf Barry and his team across the country, the returning officer, for the efficiency, expertise and the manner in which you've conducted this election. You were the custodians of our ballots. We trust you with them, and you did a fine job. We thank you for that. Gurmila Mahagwif Galerics Nairo Cantála.
Taoiseach Micheál Martin there congratulating Katherine Connelly on her election as 10th President of Ireland, President-elect Katherine Connelly. Let's take a look at the final result now as declared at Dublin Castle. Katherine Connelly got 63.4% of the vote. Heather Humphreys was on 29.5%. Jim Gavin was on 7.2%. And of course, over 200,000 people spoiled their votes. There were 200,000 spoiled and invalid votes in this presidential election. Well, let's stay with this story now, and I'm joined in studio by Alison O'Connor, Sunday Times columnist, and our own Micheál Lehane. Just listening to Katherine Connelly's speech there, she described herself as an inclusive president. She said she would raise her voice and shape a new republic. What did you make of what she had to say?
Yeah, I thought she sounded very presidential, and I thought that was a really good note to strike, where she said that she would be making notice, she would be an inclusive president who would not be making a distinction on the basis of how people voted, you know, that she would be a president for all, which I think is a really strong and uniting note to start off on. And I also thought it was interesting, she talked about shaping a new republic, but she said that her message was to raise your voice in every way you can, and that sounded like she was saying, I'm now president, I'm in a different role, but to keep the movement, as she would have said, to keep the movement going. I also think you can't take for granted, there's obviously a lovely atmosphere there in Dublin Castle. It's a stunning achievement, but even to see all people from different political shades, obviously they're happily chatting to each other. When you look at other countries and how democracy is under threat, we had our campaign. The campaign is now over. The Taoiseach, the Tánaiste, everybody is congratulating Katherine Connelly, as is Heather Humphreys, who I think has been exceptionally gracious in defeat. And I think it sets a very good course now for Katherine Connelly to become our president and to be the president for the next 7 years.
Yes, Micheál, there was a very united congratulations there and a lovely atmosphere, as Alison said. And she's very private, really, Katherine Connelly, talked about her own family being private, but she also stressed that she is going to be very inclusive.
Yes, inclusive, absolutely. And I suppose another interesting point there, she spoke about being a president who will listen a lot and take considered views. And she said only speak when necessary, but equally pointing out that she believes there is a role for constructive questioning if you are going to have a properly functioning republic. So I think the measure will be of all of this, what particular approach and style she will take to this. Will this be public utterances, or will it be more behind closed doors in those regular chats with the Taoiseach, where she poses those constructive questions? That's going to be an interesting one to watch. But what you are going to see is someone who, throughout her political career in the Dáil, or whether it was as last Ceann Comhairle, takes a fairly considered view of things and a fully researched one before she speaks. Now,
I know it's Katherine Connelly's day, but I want to ask you about the bigger picture and the fallout for the government parties. We heard Peadar Tóibín saying that this result, Katherine Connelly's landslide victory, is basically giving the two fingers to the government parties.
Yes. I suppose the only thing in the government's favour is that a general election, on the face of it, is a long way off. But what you see is left unity for the second time this year. The difficulty in trying to get the government formed was an example of left unity as well. Now you're seeing something really tangible at the close of the year. As well as that, what you have from Micheál Martin's perspective was a shambles, really, and the fallout of that is continuing to play out. And whether or not he emerges fully damaged as a result of that, we'll only know in the next few weeks. But I think it could well shorten his time as Taoiseach. Could sometime in early 2027 now be the time when that change takes place. Some in his party thinking that for Simon Harris, it's probably just about all right, a far from spectacular showing, but there is a respectable enough vote there. And given the fact that Heather Humphreys was a substitute in this campaign, he probably just about gets through it.
So some real soul searching going on then in the government parties, Alison.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. I mean, it was the two government parties got an awful belting yesterday. There's no doubt about that. And as Micheál was alluding to, the thing most in their favour, I think, is the fact that they're still within the first year of their what would possibly be or likely be their 5-year, what they will hope will be their 5-year term. But it really is a difficult time for them politically, I heard talk from ministers throughout the day talking about things that were going to change, all the infrastructure, disabilities, that sort of thing, where they're sort of trying to send out a message, I suppose, we've heard you and we are going to take action. But at a separate level then, as Micheál was saying, I think that Simon Harris is in less difficulty, but I think Simon Harris is a man who'll be very, very happy that he's not facing any sort of an election anytime soon, given he hasn't had good history with elections since he's become leader. And I think it's a rocky time. It's definitely a rocky time for Micheál Martin. He's looking at this report into Fianna Fáil's selection of Jim Gavin. He has to get over that over the next couple of weeks. So he's probably safe until he steps down as Taoiseach, but you couldn't rule anything out at this stage.
It's been a real... Sorry, Micheál, go ahead.
You will see no appetite for our government to hold that Katherine Connelly Galway West by-election anytime soon. Now, I would suspect that'll be pushed out to next May, and that'll be the next electoral test for the Left Alliance and also for the government.
But it's been an absolutely extraordinary day with the result almost known at 9:10 this morning. I heard Kevin Humphreys calling it.
I don't think I've ever. Have you seen Kevin Humphreys called? I don't think I've ever seen something called like this called that early. It really was. It was incredible. I mean, I suppose it was said at the start a lot that this was boring, but when you consider that we had, first of all, we had Mairead McGuinness pulling out, and I'm sure it was a very tough day for her today due to health reasons, and then Jim Gavin. I mean, it had its moments. It really, it did in the end.
Yeah, and throughout all of that, Katherine Connelly in the background, declaring herself as a candidate and eventually winning.
Yeah, getting on the road so early and pioneering, I think, a style of campaigning that others will look to now and see, is it possible to do something similar? But I think, like all things that look simple, it usually requires intricate and fairly long preparations. And that was evident in Katherine Connelly's approach.
All right, Micheál Lehane and Alison, I'm sorry. We're going to have to leave it there because we're going back now to Dublin Castle and to Sharon. Sharon.
Eileen, thank you. Welcome back to St Patrick's Hall. Well, the atmosphere has quietened slightly as people move out after that declaration of Katherine Connelly as the winner of this presidential election. Joining me now is Paul Murphy, People Before Profit TD. You supported Katherine Connelly. How are you feeling this evening?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling a bit tired at this stage, but I think it's a huge victory for Katherine, for the values she stands for, and for the entire left. I mean, we came together, and for the first time, we have won a national election on first preference votes. This is going to be, or it is now, the biggest presidential election victory ever, the biggest percentage, the biggest number of votes, the biggest margin of victory. So it's a tremendous endorsement of the values, the values of equality, of housing justice, of defence of neutrality, and the movement that galvanised around Katherine that she spoke about there.
It is one thing, I suppose, for those people, that sizable majority voting for somebody like Katherine Connelly in a presidential election, but would they vote for your party in a general election, do you think?
It's definitely a different thing. There's no question that a presidential election, I think, in a way suited us because it was a values-based election. And actually, I think, the secret to this election is that most people actually agree with the values that Katherine Connelly espouses. That's the most important lesson. But I think the challenge now is to us on the left to see how this momentum, how this movement, over 15,000 people volunteered to join the campaign. The majority of those, the big majority, were not members of any political party. So how the energy of this movement can continue onto the streets in terms of defending now our neutrality, defending the triple lock, calling for the full implementation of the Occupied Territories Bill, for action on the cost of living crisis and on housing, but also into the elections. We're calling for now a conference of the left to see how can we present a coordinated challenge at the next general election to give people a clear choice. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, those that would prop them up, or the possibility of a left government for the first time in history.
And what about all those other people who were neither? They didn't want to vote for your candidate, they didn't want to vote for the government candidates.
I think there's a job for us on the left in particular to have a dialogue with those people, not to shame people for spoiling their vote, to listen. People are very alienated, very angry at the political system, and I'd say they're right to be. But the question is, who's responsible? Is it those at the bottom? Is it vulnerable people like asylum seekers or LGBTQ people or people of colour? No, I would say it's those at the top, both the government and those who profit from the various crises we have, health crisis, housing crisis, cost of living, and a question of what to do about it, how to get that energy in a more productive direction.
And would you be hopeful that there were a lot of younger people who voted in this election?
Yes.
Will they vote next time around?
I think they will. I mean, it's why I always felt that, you know, the turnout was being talked down. Generally, there was kind of the accepted wisdom that the turnout was going to be low. And I was doubtful about that because I felt there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm amongst young people. I mean, with 1,500 people at a gig in Vicar Street sold out in about half an hour. And I think, let's say in the group I'm involved in Dublin South West, everyone's now saying, how can we get involved in something else? We'll join the local Dublin South West Together group, consider getting involved in a left-wing political party. So I think these people aren't going to go away. They know that the presidency isn't going to be able to build the kind of new republic that Katherine speaks about by itself, and that we need a movement beyond that, including to take the government.
I'll bring in our political correspondent now, Paul Cunningham. That's it. As Paul Murphy was saying, it opens a door, but what will happen once that door is opened? What will the parties on the left do to try to bring all those people and to hold on to them for the next election?
Yeah, I mean, there is an energy there, and I think Paul's right on that, and they will try and capitalise it. All of the political leaders are saying the same thing. The trick is that on one hand, when you're going for a presidential election, you can unite. At a general election, you have to search your own identities. And to a certain extent, if you're of the left, then you're chasing the same votes. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens in the Galway West by-election. Paul said the parties of the left should meet, try and agree on a strategy. Can they do that? And then if they can do that, can they actually implement it? So the first time we'll get a sense of that is in May. But yeah, absolutely. We've been talking about a left-led government for decades. Could this be a moment? We don't know. I know some are very sceptical of it. They feel that there's just too many things will pull them apart. But let's see.
And Katherine Connelly speaking there in her speech about shaping a new republic and being a president for Galway, a president for everybody in the country. She also spoke about representing the country professionally and with humility and humanity, I think she said. And not there perhaps to the people who didn't vote for her and were worried.
Yeah, and she said that a couple of days ago on Galway, that she wanted to represent people who vote for her and who didn't. She said it again. She wants to be an inclusive president. And yet at the same time, she did actually have a nod to those campaign issues which she raised, where she did talk about the Irish language, she did talk about climate change, she did talk about that questioning, which was one of the issues which Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were raising repeatedly. So how does she square that circle, which on the one hand being true to who she is, and yet at the same time being that person who represents everyone? It's quite a pivot. Michael D. Higgins was able to do it. So let's see what technique Katherine Connelly uses to be able to achieve those goals.
And for now, Katherine Connelly did speak about her family being private people, and she thanked them for standing there on the stage with her. But is there a big party planned for this evening?
There isn't really. There's lots of disparate parties happening. Like, I will hopefully make it to our party in our Dublin South West group, so lots of constituency parties. And then I think some of the people from the Central campaign are going to one particular pub, but there isn't one big party. I think that may come in the coming weeks, perhaps around the inauguration.
Well, maybe you can find out what that elderflower reference was that she also made in her speech and come back to us and tell us what that was. For now, Paul Murphy, Paul Cunningham, thank you both for being with us here. Well, that's all from here from Dublin Castle on the night that Katherine Connelly, an independent candidate with the backing of the left parties, has been elected as the 10th President of Ireland. And there is, of course, continuing coverage on the RTE News app, I should say. And we're back at 9:05, but for now, from everybody here at Dublin Castle, all of the crew, and indeed everybody back at base. Thank you for being with us. Have a lovely evening.